You know that the problem with my mother is that she was broken from the time she was a little girl because her father sexually molested her. And I think that in some ways she was never really capable of giving us the kind of love that a child deserves from a mother, because that whole thing was so shattering to her and made her extremely vulnerable. And so I mean, even with whatever was happening, Dad was in California, and Horace Holt was a very good-looking, smooth guy. He probably sensed that she was an easy mark.
Yeah.
What do you remember about Ona?
I remember thinking she was beautiful. I remember driving up. It was in a desert, and driving up, we went to visit her.
This is at Lake Havasu.
Yes. I was probably 4 years old or 5. And I remember there was maybe a curved front with those shiny white rocks that had sparkles in them. And driving up, I remember the front of the house, and my mom said, "Is there something you can sing to her?" And standing in the living room, with the those desert houses with the glass fronts, singing "I'd Do Anything for You, Dear."
Really?
I sang that to her.
Oh, really? I'm sure she was very touched by it.
And I just remember thinking she was beautiful with dark hair and
she was a very beautiful
skin.
woman. Yeah.
And those kind of peg-leg pants.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that visit.
Yeah, I do too.
But that's I don't know if I met her any other times than that.
I don't either.
But that's the only time I remember meeting her.
Yeah.
And his workshop with stones. And just wandering around that property.
Yeah.
That's the only time. But she and Grandpa Rees must not have been married very long.
Well, they weren't, because they divorced when I was still in diapers, so I might have been a year and a half old.
What do you think about him kept him from walking away from that responsibility in the way that she did?
I think he had Dad had a strength of character and a sense of responsibility that I think was rare, because most men would have simply walked away. And I think to me it's really remarkable at age 23 he is trying to take care of 2 boys and working and looking for work. There were times when he couldn't find work and he had to leave us with people. And so sometimes there were months when, I don't have any remembrance of that, but he talks about leaving us with some people and looking back, and Billy and I are standing in the door just bawling our eyes out because we don't want him to go. And that would have been undoubtedly more traumatic because Mom had abandoned us. But I don't know, it's a really good question, but for me it is an indication that he was really trying to be a responsible father, and he was working trying all kinds of things. He went up to Mojave to work out in the mine that caved in on him. He worked on the signal gang for the Southern Pacific Railroad, and some people put a telephone pole in sand, and he climbed it and it fell and broke both of his legs. And he was in the hospital for, I think, a couple of months. When we lived on the farm, the Truxton Canyon Dairy, he milked 35 cows by hand morning and night, and then delivered the milk 120 miles on a route. And he, as I say in my interview, he went 371 days working 18 hours a day. But he was trying to do the best that he could with what he had, and there really wasn't much because there were, 20% of people in the United States were out of work, and it was a terrible time to try and make ends meet.
How did he come to have all 5 of you together?
Well, because when he met Faye in the bar at Yarnell Junction,
she already had the 2 girls?
She had the 2 girls, and they had Clayton, and then he came to Durango to get Billy and me, and we went, I must have been 4 or 5 at that point.
And you and Gloria are the same age, right?
Gloria and I are the same age,
And how old is Evelyn?
Evelyn is about a year or so younger than Gloria. Okay. She's in between Gloria and Clayton. So there were 5 of us. This is where we were living in Prescott, and things were again extremely difficult. Then.
How old were you when Faye and Granddad married?
Well, that would have been about that time. I would have been about, I think, 4 or 5. I guess Clayton's, I think, 4 or 5 years younger than I am. So I probably would have been about that age. And then Faye immediately began to be really abusive. She was really...
With all 5 of you?
Yeah, especially she was harder on Gloria than anyone, but she was harder on Bill too.
Why was she harder on some than others?
Well, Gloria was the oldest one of hers, and Bill was the oldest one of Dad's, I guess. I don't know. But maybe as the oldest child, they were more resistant to her or whatever. But she was, and Dad talks about how hard she was on Gloria. She was, and Gloria, when my teenage years, Gloria went to live in a convent for a period of time.
By choice?
I think it was the court. There was something, I don't know all of the details of it, but she went to live with some Catholic, in a Catholic home of some kind. And I don't know all the reasons why.
How long was she there?
I don't know.
Do you think she had a child there?
No, I don't think Gloria, there was nothing of that. It was just, I don't know whether it's that she wasn't getting along with Faye at home or what it was. But, I can find that out. But no, I think she was 14 or 15 maybe.
Oh, pretty young.
Yeah, 13 maybe.
So you were all 5 kids and the 2 grown-ups in Prescott, and what was Granddad doing at that time?
Granddad was trying to find work. He was working in a mine. He was, he finally, I think he was trying to find, digging this well. He decided to try and get some flagstone and sell it, some sandstone and sell it, and they got a whole container load of it and took it to California to sell and didn't make any money. They put all that labor in it.
And how long did that living situation last with the 5 kids and Faye?
Well, we went from there to, I think, to the dairy. And we were on the dairy, and that's when Faye started leaving and, hanging out with soldiers and stuff. And Dad was trying to get her to come back. And then he decided to move to Los Angeles.
With all 5 of you?
With all 5 of us.
That was Aliso Village?
Yeah, and they lived in the Aliso Village until they split up again. She ran off again for a couple of months with a sailor. And during that time, her father came and took the girls to live back to his home. Faye came one day and, as Dad said, stole Clayton while he was at work.
Wow.
And so there was Bill and me, and he was feeling guilty, I think, about not being in the war. So that's when he took us to Gallup, and Mom came down from Durango, and he then joined the Navy and went into the South Pacific. And there...
It didn't have anything to do with steady work?
No, I don't think so, although it could have been. I don't think so. I think he had work when he was, I think he was working in the shipyards. It was during the war, so there was a lot of jobs. It's one of the things that happened,
Yeah.
is that, so I think he was working in the shipyards. But I think he was just kind of discouraged and worn out, but also he, you know, he was a young, healthy man, and all of his colleagues and friends and relatives were going to war, and I think he felt he needed to do that.
Who was supporting Faye's kids?
Her parents.
Hmm.
So then Faye and the two girls moved back to Missouri
With Clayton.
with Clayton, and that was a very hard time for Clayton. The girls got married young, and you know, things were, you know, on that end not very happy. And Faye wouldn't let Dad have contact with them. I wouldn't let him come and visit them.
How long had he been their father by then?
He had adopted them, actually, in when we lived in Long Beach. So he'd been there from the time they were 5 until, well, Gloria would have been 5, so Gloria would have been the same age as me, so probably 4 or 5 years. I don't know exactly. He may not have adopted them till everybody was sealed in the temple when I was a teenager.